If there is one scientific theory that has faced the most attacks, it would undoubtedly be the theory of evolution, the heliocentric model, which states that Earth is not the center of the universe, and the fact that the Earth is spherical rather than flat eventually made peace with religion. So why is it that only the theory of evolution continues to be fiercely attacked to this day? Some suggest it is because evolution reduces humans from the position of being God's chosen children to mere animals. Others argue that since the advent of the agricultural revolution, humans have viewed nature not as something to coexist and harmonize with, but as property to be controlled and exploited. However, it is not easy to pinpoint a completely convincing reason. Can humans not be one among many animals and also a chosen species by God? Linnaeus, despite being a devout Christian, classified humans as a type of ape rather than a special species at the top of the tree of life. With the development of genetics, it was discovered that humans share almost all of their genes with chimpanzees and bonobos, and that we can trace back to a common ancestor. Despite arguments that evolution is just a hypothesis that cannot be tested or observed in reality, increasing empirical evidence for evolution has elevated it from a simple hypothesis to a theory that explains facts. However, the concept of life being designed by a creator, creationism, still garners significant support. In the United States, 40% of citizens still believe that life was created in its present form at the beginning and has remained unchanged, a belief that even has a sophisticated name, intelligent design. But why does this phenomenon persist? If there is a 1.5-inch hole in a tree where a certain bug lives, and the average beak length of woodpeckers, the only predator of this bug, is 1 inch, how will the beak length of future generations of woodpeckers change? People generally think that the descendants of the woodpeckers will be born with longer beaks than the previous generation. However, the correct answer is that the beak lengths of the descendants will have a normal distribution with an average of 1 inch. It is not the variation itself or the organisms that adapt to the environment that drives evolution, but the brutal process of natural selection, where organisms that are not well adapted to their environment fail to leave offspring. The average beak length of future woodpeckers gradually increases because those with shorter beaks experience disadvantages and leave fewer offspring, eventually dying out. Over time, small differences accumulate and can lead to significantly different variants, while the process of evolution, where entirely new variations appear, is gradual and slow. Once a beneficial variation for survival emerges, it spreads rapidly to the extent that nature allows. The key to evolution is not the change in individual organisms, but the cumulative changes in the population due to subtle differences in survival rates. This also answers the argument against evolution, known as the missing link question, which asks why fossil evidence does not capture all these subtle and gradual changes. Not all organisms can become fossils to document every minor variation. And once a beneficial variation for survival appears, it quickly reaches an optimal level. Even today, the average body shape of modern humans is quite different from previous generations. This difference becomes more pronounced the further back in time we go. However, there are no actual fossils showing these changes, only statistical and photographic evidence. People also tend to view the wild as a static and peaceful world, often overlooking the fact that most organisms do not survive to leave offspring and die due to unforeseen accidents, which is part of the evolutionary process. Understanding these aspects of natural selection reduces the tendency to view evolution as a continuous process where an individual gradually changes, much like the evolution depicted in Pokémon. A classic example that reinforces this perception is the March of Progress illustration, which depicts the evolution of monkeys gradually transforming into humans. This perception leads to questions like, if monkeys evolved into humans, why are there still monkeys? Unlike artificial intelligence, humans can create standard images of cats and dogs after seeing just a few, forming confident categories of nature. Why does our brain categorize nature so confidently with such a small number of samples? This is known as Plato's problem. In a study, children were shown an image of a fictional animal called a hergop. For the children, the first hergop they saw became the standard hergop, and they perceived the other hergops, which had slight variations like lacking ear fur, not as different species but as abnormal and exceptional specimens. In the minds of children, a hergop is always a hergop, and a rhinoceros is always an animal with a horn on its nose. The human brain is naturally essentialist, making it difficult to understand that a species can change. Therefore, children who have not yet received scientific education are naturally inclined to believe in creationism. regardless of their parents' beliefs. Dog shows select the most purebred dogs that best represent the standard of their breed, such as the standard Welsh Corgi or Poodle. However, the concepts of purebred and standard are just human constructs. According to cognitive psychology, when people categorize objects, the brain tends to use past memories and experiences to create an essence of non-existent objects. Thus, people tend to view numbers like 2 and 4 as more typical even numbers compared to 354 or 178, even though they are all even. Before genetics, even biologists classified species by assuming the essence and standard of an organism, considering organisms with different appearances as errors or deviations from the true form. However, in reality, every organism is different and every individual can be considered a variant species. Charles Darwin, while studying barnacles, observed such extreme variations that he wondered whether to consider them as separate species or variations of one species. How should the range of a species be determined, and what variations should be allowed within a species? Even with today's most scientific classification methods, including genetics, it is nearly impossible to create an exact category of nature. However, for the essentialist brain, the concept of a species is a fixed entity with an unchanging essence. Studies with children show that they struggle to understand even human changes. Children often believe that some people were born as children and others as adults. In this perception, humans must always have been humans. The March of Progress illustration reinforces the idea of monkeys giving birth to human-like descendants, who then give birth to more human-like descendants. On the other hand, phylogenetic trees, which depict how evolution occurs, can also cause misunderstandings. Such forms of phylogenetic trees can create the misconception that humans evolved in sequence from the oldest monkeys to orangutans, gorillas, and chimpanzees. People tend to think that the longer the line, the older the species, and species placed close together on the tree appear biologically closer. However, modifying the phylogenetic tree can make it seem like humans evolved more quickly than other primates, which is not a problem because the tree structure is arbitrary. Phylogenies can be drawn in any way. They simply show which species share common ancestors and how species branched off from common ancestors, not reflecting the actual history of evolution by the length of lines or order of species. Another problem with phylogenies is that extinct species are not shown. 99.9% of all species that have ever lived on Earth are already extinct. Since it's difficult to restore DNA information from fossilized species, placing them accurately on the phylogenetic tree is challenging. Thus, extinct species are usually excluded, making the evolutionary history appear as a clean, linear progression like Pokemon evolution. All of this boils down to the brain. The human brain has evolved over a long time to understand the world in some way. The brain has evolved to instinctively understand and utilize basic physical laws with minimal observation. However, a sufficient understanding for survival did not require creating more complex and accurate theories. Even if our distant ancestors discovered that the Earth was round, it didn't help them hunt better or survive better than those who believed it was flat. Clearly, the world operates differently from our intuitive understanding. Trusting only our brain's intuition means we will often conflict with scientific facts. Despite being in an era where we send spacecraft to the moon and study the origins of the universe, the reason we still cannot see the world as it truly is not because we are stupid or stubborn, but because we are the descendants of Homo sapiens, masters of survival, who have successfully relied on intuition to survive for hundreds of thousands of years. Because we are their descendants,